When it comes to being successful in today's seller's market, two things you have to take into consideration. And by the way, these aren't two new things. These have been the two things that you have to take into consideration throughout, in my entire career. What's your price and what's your exposure, right? Two reasons that a home will be successful in selling in this market, and that's pricing and exposure. And now, more than ever, it's actually very challenging. Even though we're in this crazy seller market, you might think, well, pricing is probably the easiest thing to come up with. It's actually not. It's the most difficult. Why is that? Because we have some sporadic behavior. We have buyers that are willing to, in some cases, pay, extremely high amounts over asking price. And that can cause some uncertainty, and it's really hard to sift through the numbers and decide what is the right price for you. So the old model of pricing it low and creating a bidding war, the old model is this. There were three ways that you could potentially price your home. There was a three-step pricing strategy that you could follow. And that was price it low. You could create a bidding war, could drive the price up to where you want it to be, but the danger there is you might leave a little bit of money on the table. Buyers might see it, especially in this market, and wonder what's wrong with it and not even go look at it because the price is too low. And ultimately, it could hurt your bottom line, right? You might not sell for that price that you really, really want. It might not drive it up to the place that you want to be. The second strategy was to price it very high. Leave some room on the table, right? Maybe we can meet in the middle, we can negotiate. And the strategy there was we're going to look for that perfect buyer that's willing to pay that premium price. It's probably only represents a small fraction of the buyers that are actually out there, but we're going to go for it and see if we can make it happen. The danger there, though, is oftentimes you end up chasing your price down, do price reduction after price reduction, finally arriving actually generally lower than where you would have been if you had just priced it correctly in the beginning. And that brings me to pricing it at fair market value. That's where you take into consideration the comps. You look at what's sold in the past, what's active on the market, what's pending. You take in all the comps and look through it almost like an appraiser's point of view and to say, what is this house really worth? And then you price it there. And in this market, if you have good exposure, good marketing and advertising, you can actually get some pretty good results through that strategy. However, it can be a challenge to do that strategy when you have some erratic comps. If you have some that sold significantly higher, maybe way higher than what fair market value would have been, those can mess up your comps. Or if you don't have enough to choose from. Right now, the problem in our Sacramento area is there's just way more home buyers than there are home sellers. So it's not uncommon that there just aren't enough homes to use as comparables, especially if you have a great property. So the strategy that I've been implementing for quite some time now, for honestly like the last 6 years, is what I call the sweet spot strategy. And it takes a lot of those factors into consideration, but we're just looking at it through a different lens, getting a little bit more creative and a little bit more flexible, especially in this seller's market. So it looks a little bit like this. This is my sweet spot strategy. So there are three things that you take into consideration when it comes to sweet spot. One, you have to take into consideration what past buyers might have been willing to pay for a property that's like yours. That's something like the comps, right? Similar to average market value, right? Fair market value. That's what an appraiser might understand. That's what we know to be true. We know that buyers have been willing to pay that price, and it's really important to at least take into consideration. Absolutely. The other thing that we have to take into consideration is what the current perception of value is from buyers that are actively looking right now. One of the ways that we determine that is looking at what is active on the market. What do other buyers have to choose from? If buyers pull up a search app on a website and they type in their criteria, what are the options? That's the competition. And it helps that those other active listings, no matter what their price are, has an impact on the buyer's perception of value. Buyers don't typically look at what has already sold. They're most likely just looking at what is active or maybe what's pending right now. So we have to be aware of what is the buyer's perception of value on a property like yours. And the third factor in the sweet spot, which is why I love the sweet spot so much, is it just gives you so much control and flexibility and again, control. The third factor that you have to include in your sweet spot pricing is what is your bottom line. There's so much power in knowing exactly what you wouldn't be able, or what you wouldn't be willing to sell your home for. For example, anything less than 600 and it doesn't make sense for me to sell my home, I'm going to rent it out, or I'm going to keep it, or I'm going to do something else with it, give it to my daughter or whatever, right? Knowing your true bottom line, what you would no longer be willing, the price at which you would no longer be willing to sell your home, gives you a lot of power. Some people are hesitant to disclose that to the agent that they're working with, and that's a mistake, especially if your agent is equipped with some level of this form of pricing. You need to align with each other and know, like, what are we working with here, right? Remember, the agent you're working with, if they're doing a good job, they want to get you the absolute highest possible price, not sell for just what the minimum that you'd expect. So, sweet spot pricing takes in three things into consideration: what past buyers have been willing to pay, what current buyers are perceiving the value, and what is your bottom line. When you analyze the data through that lens, you will arrive at your sweet spot. So for this current example, I thought about a property that we priced recently. Past buyers have been willing to pay anywhere from $625,000 up to $750,000 for properties that have similar features and comps. Current buyers are looking at anywhere from $650,000 up to about $775,000. That's what current buyer perception of a property like this, the one that I had in mind, is. The bottom line, after some questions and dialogue and conversation, we determined that the bottom line, the least amount that a home seller would be willing to sell the home for, is $600,000. So we essentially have a range of $600,000 to $775,000. But remember, we got to take all three things into consideration. We can't just rely on this one, knowing that one sold for $775,000. We can't just rely on this one, knowing that there are other properties on the market at $775,000 and $750,000. We got to kind of take it all into consideration. So by doing this, we arrived at a price of $675,000. That's $75,000 more than what our client's bottom line is. That's $100,000 more than what one of the previous comps was. But keep in mind, if we listed at $775,000, we would be going for that one premium price, the one comp that happened to sell at that price, and it doesn't serve our client to do that. So the sweet spot is $675,000. Anyhow, if you want to know more about it, I know it's a little bit outside the box and it's probably not the norm that you're going to see on YouTube or when you Google how to price my home. But that's the strategy that we've been using for years now. It's the one that's been producing great results for our clients and helping them win. So if you want to know more about it, or you're curious what sweet spot pricing would look like for your home, then reach out to me and I'll be happy to help.